Cecil, how about if you tell us a little bit about your career since you left Olivet? I think you stayed in the area for a while.
I stayed in the area. I took a job actually in my last year at school. I took a part-time job at a company called David Bradley Manufacturing. It was owned, a wholly owned Sears Roebuck company. Sears Roebuck was a very progressive company, way ahead of its time in terms of employee benefits and that sort of thing. They had a profit-sharing program for their employees long before most companies even thought about doing that.
Okay.
And so I worked for that company and got a really great background, manufacturing. I learned a tremendous amount. I had the boss that I had there, who happened to be the chief engineer when I was hired, was probably more influential in shaping my business life than anyone that I can think of. He gave me, he's the first individual that really challenged me to try to be the best that I could be.
Okay.
And gave me over a period of time, gave me a confidence that I could achieve more than when I was growing up I would have ever even imagined.
That you could do.
Or thought about. And so I worked with that company for from 1942 when I actually I started with them before I graduated on a part-time basis, but then worked for them from my graduation in 42 until 1953, which would be 11 years. And then we took all of our savings, profit sharing from Sears Roebuck, which and the amount that we had accumulated in that, we had done a few real estate deals in Kankakee and made a little money on some homes that we had bought and sold. We took all of that and bought a little business in Waukegan, Illinois, a small manufacturing business. And from there we built that business into a fairly successful manufacturing operation.
And what was its name?
That little company was called Quality Tool Works.
Quality Tool Works, okay.
And they made perishable tools that are used by machine shops on their machines. We didn't make the machines, we just made the tools that actually did the metal cutting. And over the period of the next 12 years or so, we built that business up. We bought some other small businesses and combined them.
Merged them.
And eventually built that up into a fairly sizable business. And in the mid-60s, we merged that business with another tool company out of Beloit, Wisconsin, called, at that time it was called Beloit Tool Company. We merged our businesses with Beloit Tool Company, and then and we did that with the intention of putting together a company large enough that we could take public.
Oh, okay. Which you did, didn't you?
Which we did in the mid-60s.
In the mid-60s, okay.
And took that company public, and the rest is history. The company is now called Regal Beloit Corporation.
When it went public, was it under the name Regal Beloit?
No, it went public under the name of, no, I think we changed the company name a few years later. I think it went public under the name Beloit Tool Corporation.
Beloit Tool Corporation, okay. And you were still with the company after it went public for a number of years?
I was active with the company for 5 years.
Okay.
And then I retired, quote unquote. And from that time on, I served on the board of directors for many years.
Okay.
And but not in an active role.
Not in the management.
Mhm.
Okay. And what year was it when you bought the little company up in Chicago area? Was that in the mid-50s?
That was 53,
53.
1953.
Okay.
And I did what I call semi-retirement in 1972. I was 52 years old at that time,
Oh, okay.
and too young to really retire.
Yep.
So we moved to Arizona, and I've been more or less of an entrepreneur all my life.
All your life. Okay.
My first business venture, before all this other happened, was shortly after World War II. I was working for David Bradley Manufacturing, but I knew that the end of the war would bring on a huge demand for housing because there had been no new homes built throughout the whole war and period. And U.S. Steel Corporation, the largest steel manufacturing company in the U.S., came out with an all-steel home, if you can imagine.
All steel home.
An all-steel home. The roof, the side walls, the interior partition walls were insulated steel paneling, and of course the thing was all put together kind of like an erector set.
Yes, I can see that.
Supposedly. And this was probably 1946, something like that. And I decided that maybe that would be a good product. It would be easily put together, and so I went to U.S. Steel and got the franchise for Kankakee County. And I had grandiose ideas.
But it sounds like they didn't go as well.
Not too great.
Okay.
They told me if I'd buy one home, I could have the franchise for the county. And so I set up what I called Northern Illinois Home Builders.
Oh.
A little business. A big name for a little business. And we built one home in Bradley.
Is it still there?
It's still there.
Oh my goodness, what's the address?
It's on, well, I can't think of the street right now.
But it's in Bradley.
But it's in Bradley. It's about a half a block off of north of Broadway Street on one of those side streets and close to the downtown area. I think it's owned by the city, and it's used as kind of a library or an outreach library for the county or something like that. But anyway, I got a couple, a man and his father, he was an Olivet graduate, Ted Kerr was his name. He and his dad were both real mechanical and home builder types.
To put it together?
And they were going to put them together, and I was going to either do the selling or hire someone else to do the selling. So we put one together, but we had so many problems getting that thing put together.
You learned a few things, huh?
And so after we got it put together and got it sold, I decided there must be easier ways to make a dollar. So that was my first business venture and my last in home building.
Home building. Now, in retirement, you did some other things with businesses, didn't you?
Yes. I don't know how to say this without maybe sounding like I'm patting myself on the back or something, but these are just the facts.
Well, that's what we want.
Over a period of our time together, we've owned a title company in Indiana.
In Indiana?
Darnell abstract company. They actually called it, back then they called them abstract companies.
Yes, they did, didn't they?
And they did the title searches on real estate transactions. We owned that for quite a few years. I actually started and owned a Dollar General store.
A Dollar General store?
In Lebanon, Indiana.
In Lebanon, Indiana.
And we operated that. I hired someone to run it for me, but we operated that for several years and then sold it to the Dollar General Corporation, and they still have a store there in Indiana, in Lebanon, Indiana. And we owned, I bought and owned a industrial supply house in Waukegan, Illinois, when we still lived there.
Okay.
Very successful and good business, which we eventually sold to a couple of young entrepreneurs who did well with it. And these were side businesses that I would hire someone else to run, and I would just more or less oversee the results of the business.
Okay.
When we moved to Arizona, we had one notable successful business. Another fellow and I and a couple of young computer experts started a company that we called TicketMaster Corporation. And that
and it's a big company now.
It's a big company now. It's the world's largest computerized entertainment ticketing system.
And you started that in Arizona primarily?
Started in Phoenix.
In Phoenix.
Put our first system in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And the company, eventually the Pritzker family, very wealthy Chicago family, they are multi-billionaire family.
Okay.
And they eventually bought TicketMaster, put a lot more money into it, and actually the fact that TicketMaster is where it is today is probably more the result of all the money that they put into it and their expertise. But we got it up to a large enough size that they were interested in buying it.
Had it expanded outside of Arizona by the time they bought it?
Yeah, we had systems in Albuquerque, New Orleans, St. Louis.
Oh, so you were reaching out.
Had one in, if you can imagine, had one in Norway.
In Norway?
Yeah, we had one fellow that had an interest and bought the franchise and took the system to Norway.
Oh my goodness.
And they're all over the world now, I guess.
Now, once you sold that, though, you didn't keep ties with that afterwards?
No, I didn't keep any ties with that.
Okay.
I had one other business enterprise that was interesting and successful after I had retired.
After you retired.
And that was a little company called Masterson Art Products. And a fella in Phoenix brought a idea for a product that was related to the art field, and brought the idea to me, and thought it had good prospect, and we got together, and he brought the idea for the first product, and we built a small company on the basis of that product. And essentially what it was a large box, 12 by 16 plastic box, similar to Tupperware really, but it was designed to hold an artist palette.
Oh, in different paints?
And the artist, and it was designed primarily for oil paints. And the artist, when they finished painting for the day, they could put their palette in this airtight box, seal it up, and the oil paints would stay fresh for quite an extended period of time, so they wouldn't have to worry about losing the oil paints that they had on their palette.
That they'd already mixed up, and
That they'd
so
already mixed.
coming back the next day, it would be in good shape.
So we took that one product, and then over a period of years, we developed, and I helped develop additional products, one of which was a product we called a Stay Wet palette. It is almost world famous now. And it was designed primarily for artists who paint with acrylic paints. And acrylic paints dry very fast. And this product was designed as a palette to prevent acrylic paints from drying out on the artist's palette while they're working. Which is a common problem. Artists who work with acrylic paints, it's not uncommon to see them take a water spray bottle and spray their palette with water to keep the acrylics moist, and especially that's a big problem in a very dry climate. So we heard of a patent that had never been exploited, but had been issued, but no one had ever done anything with it.
To use it or anything, okay?
So we found out the owner of the patent, and it turned out to be a couple of gentlemen who were up in their 60s or 70s. We bought the patent from them and then designed the product, and essentially what it is a sponge material that is put on the palette and then soaked with water and put on the palette, and then a special type of paper that has high wet strength, such as wallpaper stock.
Okay, that holds the water then.
And soak that paper in water and put it on top of the wet sponge material. The moisture from the sponge comes through the paper, keeps the acrylics moist all day long. You have no problem with them drying out.
And that's still used then?
That product is all over the world.
Stay wet, they call it Stay Wet.
Stay Wet.
Stay Wet palette. And it is, a matter of fact, when we moved here to Hendersonville, I was having a picture frame, and I went into a art shop here in town. And just as a matter of interest, I asked him, I said, do you happen to have any Stay Wet palettes in your store? And the clerk I was talking to said, oh yes, we have those. Those are wonderful. She started going on telling me about how good they were. And eventually I told her that I had been involved in the development of that product. And she stopped, and there were probably about 10 customers in the store. She stopped and she started yelling to the people and said, hey, this guy invented the Stay Wet palette.
Wow. Now what was the name of that company?
That was called Masterson Art Products.
Now is it still going, Masterson?
It's still going.
Okay.
We sold it several years ago to people that are carrying it on very successfully.
Carrying it on, okay. Well, great.